Our GDP has grown more than pre-independence colonial, you know, more than what the colonial guys, plus the other 4 presidents or 3 presidents have all combined. We have done better than them.
But is it being felt in the Kenyans' pockets?
It's not. You see, the reason why it's not felt can vary from one reason to another. One, because it's part of the reasons. Let me explain in simple language. You see, the price, he'll tell you, Professor, to measure GDP, it's the market value of goods. It's about price. Now, the price of 1 20-liter jerrycan of cooking oil was 2,000 shillings in 2020. Today it's 6,500 now as we speak. So if you count the output by a factory of that, producing that, you know, it will be 5 times more. And it's the same in many, because raw materials, that's why our imports have gone to 3 times. According to the report, our imports was 2.2 trillion, and our exports are only 600, 700,000. So it's 3 times. The reason is because the value of the import has gone up. So when you're using those raw materials, the value of goods and services produced so there are a lot of factors which really contribute to this growth. So that's why some of us, when the government said that last year, you know, about the beautiful picture, the rosy picture, we said no, it's all about, you know, let's look at the real. Not the nominal figures, because you know there is inflation adjustment, there's a price adjustment, there are things that need to be looked at. So I think it's not being felt. The ordinary person, because the same government reported that up to 35% of Kenyans have not got back their jobs that they lost. That's just early this year they said so. So it's not. So ordinary people are getting, situation is getting worse because of the inflation, because of the prices of goods and things have gone up. So they're getting less value. With the same amount of income, the incomes are the same. But the things are, you're buying things 3 times, 4 times the price. So they can't feel it. When you tell them, you know, this is 7.5, yes, but my pocket has not.
It doesn't translate. And perhaps, Prof, as you expound on that, I'm still looking at some of the details from that report. And according to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, 33 out of 47 counties accounted for less than 197 billion of contribution each to the economy. So according to those latest data from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, majority of the counties are still in the red when it comes to they're struggling to build local manufacturing, agricultural industries and the sectors a decade after devolution. Well, what's your reaction to that?
Maybe before I react to your statement, and let me support my colleague here. I think when we came to this studio, you introduced him as a businessman. And clearly you can see he has a grasp of what is happening on the ground. He's not talking from data, from textbooks, from reality. And I think it's important to be bringing such business people to this studio so that they deal with reality. Academics, we need to be a bit more rosy. Now, he says that the economy recovered from negative 0.3 to 7.5. In any country, that would be rosy. Because if you get somebody from ICU and he recovers and goes home, everybody will celebrate. But with the person who was in a general ward, we don't celebrate much. So we think the person has recovered more. Agriculture did very badly. I think it's because of the weather. But at the end of the day, I agree with him. What matters is not the statistics. It is, do I have a job? And do I have money in the pocket? That's what people on the streets are asking. In fact, most of them will never read the economic survey. They don't even know it was released. And it is important not to read too much into that data, but focus on what matters to ordinary people. Now, on counties, only a few counties seem to be doing well economically, 10 years at the GDP, and that's not surprising. When I drive around Nairobi, I always find a lot of county number plates on the streets. I don't know what those counties do in Nairobi. So despite devolution, we devolved politically, but economically, we are still centered around Nairobi. Everybody wants to come here. And I think that's a very serious shortcoming, because devolution was not about politics. It was not about MCAs. It was about economics. So that we empower people in the grassroots, in Mashinani, so they can now start coming up economically. So that we don't see Nairobi as the only place where you can manufacture, as the only place where you can get a job. But that has not evolved. In fact, what seems to have happened with the devolution is Nairobi has become more prestigious. And if you look at all the big government projects, they are just around Nairobi. So what we need to do is, when we elect governors next year, or this year, they must focus on their counties. They must make their counties attractable. They must make sure that the investors come, they invest. And very important, make sure that their people invest.
Okay.
And I'll give you a good example.
Yeah.
Look at how many universities we have in this country. About almost 70. But when people graduate from Karatina University, from Kabega University, from Egerton University, do they stay there? They come to Nairobi, or they leave the country. So we need to attract these young brains, these skilled people, to stay in the counties and catalyze the economic growth.
Okay.
And that's why the data is saying the economy is growing, but only in certain parts of the country.
All right, all right.
And my friend should also have said that one reason why people are not feeling the effect of the GDP growth is because of inequality. Some people are benefiting from this growth more than others.
Yeah, of course.
We must take that.
What's your take on it, Fred? Let's listen for him first in terms of it translating to the ordinary Mwananchi. Yeah.
It's been well said
Yeah.
that the effects of this uptick in the GDP has not been felt around. That's why very many of us would question if it is there really. But of course, as Bill has said, and the professor has added very ably, if you have been in the bad state that we were, locked down, when you come out of it, whatever little you do will show.
Yeah.
So we have to accept that.
Yeah.
Now, the issue of, you mentioned something about contribution of 33 counties, 190-something billion?
Yes, 197 billion contribution each to the economy.
Yes, now,
Yeah.
the tragedy of our devolution is that it was political in terms of implementation.
Yeah.
Yet it was meant to have been an economic impetus to our development. If you compare, say, what's happened in the US, California State, which is a devolved unit of the US government, contributes 25% to the GDP. It is not the capital city.
Yeah, says a lot.
It says something.
Yeah.
Here, Nairobi, from what I've heard elsewhere, contributes probably 60-something %.
Yeah.
So almost everything that is of value seems to be happening here. So if we devolved government, the economics should also devolve. Ideally, in modern development, economics leads politics, not politics leading economics. So that's our tragedy,
Okay.
and we have to start speaking to it directly.
Well, we have a politician in the panel.
Let me
No, he's a businessman, not an economist.
Okay,
He's not a
okay.
But
politician.
let me put in my
2 cents.
first, let me just, this issue about the economy, by the way, the questions are almost similar all over the world. You remember when this gentleman who was the president of the United States before Trump, Barack Obama, and the economy, the Republicans kept asking him, where are the jobs? You're told the figures, where are the jobs, where's the money? Then when Trump was campaigning, he said, these figures by Democrats are funny. And, he said, they're just cooked.
Yeah.
But so the questions will always be there. When you say the economy is good, where are the jobs will come from? But I think when we designed devolution, because I was an active player in Bomas when we drafted all these things, and I chaired particularly 3 of the chapters that I chaired the technical committee that developed. I think the devolution, the essence of devolution is about devolution of the functions of government to the counties. That's basically what the devolution was about. It's not really about economic institutions themselves. But a number of factors do determine whether a county can, contribute to development. For example, when I became a member of parliament, in one of my constituencies, in Elwak, the Ministry of Mines told me there's 2 billion tons worth of gypsum. So I got some experts from the US. I remember I took them there, flew them there. And I said, I want this thing developed. I want a cement factory. I want this. They said, look, my friend, one, we need power supply, not generators. There's no power. The grid, national grid doesn't go there. Number 2, we need roads. You produce, where do you sell them? You can't sell them in Mandara. You need to sell it in Nairobi, where the population. So sometimes the infrastructure, sometimes the market is empty. So these institutions have developed in Nairobi and Mombasa. And so, for example, most of our revenue nowadays comes from customs duty and VAT on imports, by the way. And this comes through Mombasa. You find Mombasa senators arguing all the time in the House that, look, we contribute 70-80% of the revenues of KRA. We need more money. But it just happens that the port was in Mombasa. So are you going to, say that all the money has to go to Mombasa because the port is there? I am in Mandera. I import my goods. I'm in Machakos. My factory is in Kajiado. But I import through Mombasa. You cannot. So I think a number of factors determine why. So, but again, lastly, I want to say, Prof. The measure of GDP, also by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, I think they need to go out of the usual convention or whatever. Because if I am a pastoralist in Mandera, I get my little cows, I do some little milk, I take it to my small market there, that value addition really is not measured. And it happens across the board in the entire country. Because this is a country, 80% of the subsistence is economics. Professors back here, they grow their sukuma, they make it to the tomatoes, mamamboga. It's very difficult for stats to capture all those things. So they make a general. So what is factored in mostly when they say 50%, 52% growth in accommodation, they're looking at hotels that are in Mombasa, Nairobi, which file returns with the ministry. They will not measure the small hotel in my village.
Okay, interesting.
And they also exclude illegal activities.
Yes.
A lot of things that happen under the table. They're not captured by GDP.
Okay. That's interesting. And gentlemen, due to time, let's just shift focus briefly and talk about something that is of utmost importance still. The Finance Bill 2022, which just this week opened for public participation at the National Assembly. And this particular bill, which contains the measures to raise revenue as unveiled by the National Assembly by the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani, seeks to raise an additional 50.4 billion, the highest ever in the country's history, to finance the budget. And it's proper to note this, that what the country has raised through Finance Bill previously has not exceeded 15 billion. So we're aiming at 50.4 billion. And in one or the other, this money must come from the taxpayers. So key in the bill, remember the excise duty proposals when it comes to popular products such as motorcycles, cosmetic and beauty products, jewelry, beer, wines and spirits, chocolate, even bottled water. This is some of the targets that KRA will be looking to raise additional revenue. Now, I'd like to start with you, Bill Okero. Having previously participated in the Finance Committee, sat in Parliament, MPs debating this particular bill right now have one eye on the election, it's safe to say, and one eye on passing this bill. So they might not give it the attention it deserves, yet it's quite critical, taking a look at the proposed taxation measures that might, drive us into hyperinflation, if you put it that way. Well, what's your take on the Finance Bill 2022 and the important public participation process?
No, public participation in our bills, by the way, is a PR exercise. I mean, much of the public view is not factored into these bills. But we discussed a couple of weeks ago, Rolf, here, and we said with elections coming in and everyone keen on nomination and election, the candidates would support the principal, the president, and so everyone in Zimio and even those others who may not be, but nobody wants to get into this thing. They have no time. By the way, attendance in Parliament it's been reducing significantly because I would be more concerned about getting my seat back than going through those things. And so it's likely to pass the way it is. Unfortunately, there are more serious issues that remember the petroleum thing, and Parliament didn't have much in terms of really reversing some of the taxations and taxes on petroleum. And so on all those ones that you see here, they will go in, and the government is desperate for revenue with the loans. Because of the loans, I think there's no two ways about it. They just have to get that money. And this is why KRA is coming up with every kind of idea, from tapping on our phones to, last time we were told, drones, to putting people, spies into our offices. But I think, and we have said many times, really Kenyans are burdened by the huge amount of taxes. Government just needs to cut its expenditure. That is the issue. Government, you must cut down you must cut your clothes to your size. You cannot live beyond your means, because then you're going to hang everybody. Life has become unbearable to many Kenyans. You know, what is happening, I'll give you an example of the one I'm in, this vegetable cooking oil. Let me tell you, you bring the crude to Mombasa, you're paying VAT 16%. You're paying duty 3%, 19%. Already this thing is over 6,000 per jerrycan. In the rest of the countries, when these things have gone up, raw materials have gone up, the producing countries, they have removed the taxes on basic necessities. Okay. Here we are adding. We're putting on water, you're putting on soda, you're putting on juice, you're putting on everything. Okay. It's about, so I think it's misplaced. And so legislators will not do anything now. Unfortunately, there's another time for them to, and this is why they're bringing in now, because it's not the time that these guys would focus.
Okay. Thanks for saying it as it is. Prof, paint a realistic picture, because he's mentioned the reality. Taxes are really high, and the Kenyan, the common Mwananchis, definitely up against this. But is this just the beginning? Are we expecting higher taxes down the road, especially this being an election year?
I think my colleague has ably explained what is happening. And one of the things he mentioned that is entrenched in our constitution, and he knows that, is public participation. But it seems that as soon as we vote in your MCA, your senator, you stay and let him do his things. Yeah. And I think we need to make people participate in decisions that affect their lives, because that was one of the spirit of 2010 constitution. So that we don't keep on complaining about unpopular decisions that we never participated in. To the taxes, I think the government is quite clever. If you look at the Finance Bill 2022, if you look at what they are targeting, they are essentials: wheat flour, maize flour, alcohol, cosmetics, things that are addictive. And if I want to talk like economics, they have raw price elasticity of demand. So even if the price goes up, you still demand them, sin taxes and so on. So I think in that way, the government is clever. But I agree with him, and have argued this in very many forums. Yeah. You may be surprised that if you cut taxes, you actually get higher tax revenues. And that has been proved. So I don't know why we cannot try that. Because if you cut the tax rates, there will be more compliance. And people say it is just the retro money, let me just pay it. So why don't we try that approach? Because the same way the government is missing money, it's the same way we are missing money. So why can't we share the burden? Now in the finance bill, there is also something else that I found interesting about depositing 50% of the tax, of the money that is in tax dispute into an account. I don't think that is fair, because if you take, for example, the dispute is 1 billion, and you tell me to deposit $500 million, where am I going to get my working capital? Where am I going to get my money? And I think the tax regime in this country should always help businessmen and women produce more revenue, and we pay more taxes. Finally, you talked about taxes. The reason why the taxes are doing so well is it is because of debt. We want to pay debt, and Kenyans are saying there's too much debt. So the government is saying, oh, you don't want us to borrow money, then pay more taxes. And I'm very eager to see how the winner of August 2022 poll is going to deal with the issue of debt and taxes. And no wonder there is a lot of focus on learning it than such substantive issues.
Okay, that's telling. Fred, what's your take? Because even as we look at the local manufacturing, higher taxes will lead to a raise in production cost, and perhaps Kenyans will be looking towards importing, and that will definitely strain manufacturing right here in the country, which in one or the other is a pillar of President Uhuru Kenyatta's Big Four agenda.
Bill said Mombasa Port is collecting, I didn't know it was getting to that level, but he mentioned about
70%,
That immediately makes the intention for manufacturing doubtful, because how do we, if almost everything is being imported, that's why the tax is heavily down there. What does that mean for local manufacturing?
See, we import petroleum, which is the main import, plus machinery. Everything is coming, raw materials.
So now, there must be, if we want to do manufacturing, there must be a different thinking so that we can start to develop raw materials. He talked about gypsum. Right now, Kenya has all this, yet it still imports occasionally cement. when we have big infrastructure projects, we are forced to try and get cement.
Yeah, yeah.
Yet we have all this raw material that is simply waiting to be exploited. So if we have to move away from this high taxation, the thinking has to be which elements of the various sectors that are contributing the highest burden to the taxman, to the Kenyan as tax, should be addressed,
okay,
so that we can rethink the way of implementing it. For example, if we want to become self-sufficient in construction, what should we do?
all right.
If we want to become self-sufficient in food, what should we do? If we want to become self-sufficient in textiles, because that's also another large component of what we import, we have to be able to do something. Remember, we had cotton. We had a lot of agricultural initiatives, including, for example, the Galana, whatever,
yeah,
to try and become self-sufficient on food, and including substitute manufacturing, which I grew up trying to do. For example, we used to do substitute motor vehicle parts. We even have numerical machining complex, which is redundant, just lying there. So if we're going to do manufacturing in this country and reduce the burden of tax, which will inevitably continue to go up for as long as we are dependent on the imports.
Okay.
Engineer,
yes.
we've discussed this thing a couple of times. You know, the question of value addition has been elusive in this country for a very long time. From the time NAC came to power, remember, and they said we are going to put value addition, the coffee, the tea, the cotton, the what, everything. But it's been elusive, nothing. It's been the same story. We're still exporting our raw materials out of the country. If it's coffee, if it's tea, if it's whatever it is that we are producing, raw materials. And this is the same in most African countries.
Yeah.
One reason is because our cost of production, we have not been competitive. Our cost of power is very high. Our freight is very high. Everything is so expensive. So if we are losing that competitiveness to other countries. And so people are finding it now, today, it's better for you to put up a factory to make this paper, to go to Tanzania. It'll be cheaper for you than to do it in Kenya. Yeah. Because the taxes are high and the cost of energy and everything is high. So there are a lot of factors that work against. And this competitiveness is what the government has been saying we're going to work on, particularly on the cost of energy and so forth and so forth. But it doesn't happen. The moment you get into office, then other priorities come in, and then we lose track. But otherwise, this country in the old days, when the rest of Africa was still not having industry, this was an industrial giant.
Yeah.
But we're losing that competitiveness now to many other countries in the region. Otherwise, it's the raw material. Every country imports raw materials, but I think we have to manufacture and sell. If you cannot sell it out, what are you going to manufacture?
Market again.
Yeah,
That's a market. That question. And Prof, perhaps as you add on and we finalize due to time, I think our time is almost up. There's usually this common notion that perhaps we aim a little bit higher than we can actually produce as a country. When you take a look at the budget, and even right here, this particular bill aiming to raise, is it 50.4 billion? And the highest ever the country has raised through a finance bill has not exceeded 15 billion. Well, what does that tell you?
I would probably say we are simply ambitious. So, and it's always good to be, I think the government knows very well they will not get 50%, but by getting higher targets, they'll probably go beyond 15 billion.
Yeah.
So I think it's good to aim high, but I think we also need to be realistic, because if you budget with the intention of getting 50 billion and you don't get, then how are you going to fill that budget? So we need to be more realistic in our budgeting, so that we budget with what we have. You said it, just put what can fit you, not what you dream about.
Okay.
I also need to correct my friend that Nairobi does not contribute 60% of the GDP. It's probably about 25%.
Okay.
It's simply overrated.
Well, the professor mentioned it. You heard it only here. Anyway, gentlemen, our time is almost up. So final comments, perhaps, as we finalize. And I don't know where you draw your final comments from, because I don't know if you've experienced the expressway so far, or you're waiting till Saturday. There's debate on restoration of Mombasa Road as it is those particular places that have been affected due to the construction that is just being finalized. Your final take, gentlemen, perhaps, as we evaluate all the issues we've been able to canvass today. Bilokero, I'll just start with you briefly.
Well, I think I'm looking forward to the expressway, because I use it. I go towards Kajiado, so it will help me up to Mololongo. And I think they have really screwed up the other road, the highway, Mombasa Highway. Some of the 3 lanes have been reduced to 2 lanes.
Yeah, true.
You know, and it's a disaster. But let me say this. I think to ordinary people, it would appear that we have put a special road for the elites who have money. And the rest of the ordinary folks,
that you have to pay to use.
So for the footbridge, the people who are working on foot, who are majority of Kenyans, from the South Sea area, the next footbridge that you can cross over, it's Imara. So you have 4 or 5 kilometers, and you see it now. If you walk in the evening and in the morning, people walking to Imara to cross over there, because they have. I mean, it's madness.
Yeah.
Some things need to have been factored in.
Even the turning points, perhaps. I've had some drivers complaining.
Even turning point now. I as I came out of South Sea, I had to go to the roundabout in Nyayo to turn, and it's crazy. And some of the things I think these guys have done is. But I hope they will address it after they get this one running.
All right. Fred, your final take?
Yeah, just appreciating the construction. And from that background, when we do construct something new, we disrupt your current state. It may go on for a while, and please accept. But this is supposed to be for our comfort, not our discomfort, even if it is at the moment appearing so. The issue of how far one should travel to be able to conveniently turn back on this road, whoever was designing it, I'm an engineer, should consider, because we are next to the city, and there will have to be shorter turnarounds than would be expected on the highway outside of the CBD. That's what I can say on that. And on the issue of taxes, it is true that if we reduce the tax regime reasonably, there will be much higher compliance. And it is possible that it will result in much more revenue. That is true. And that has been done in places, and it has worked, including in some places where it was extreme and they took it to 0 and they charged other things, they still got more revenue.
All right.
So those models should be looked at.
Okay, engineer. Prof, over to you.
Very briefly, expressway. I think if you come up with an expressway or SGR, the purpose is to transport as many people and as many goods as efficiently as possible. So I'm surprised that expressway is targeting private cars. In fact, if I was asked, expressway should be free for matatus and buses so that we can leave our cars at home, bring less pollution and less congestion in the city. That's what I see. I also surprised that we are being told you cannot use M-Pesa to pay for expressway. Kenya is a land of M-Pesa. Finally, I expect more economics from the leading presidential contenders. Let them tell us how they are going to address our economic issues after they get into power. The rest, to me, are sideshows.
Hula baloo, as they say. Thank you so much, Professor Exen Iraqi, Associate Professor, Faculty of Business, UON. Asante sana for your time. Businessman, Bilokero, former Mandela Senator. Asante sana. And Engineer Fred Nabangi, who's a management consultant. We appreciate your input right here on Morning Prime, which brings us to the end of today's edition of Morning Prime. There you have it, Sokoni in brief. We took a look at a couple of issues, the Finance Bill 2022, the Economic Survey Report, and other nitty-gritties that you need to know in the world of business. So take a look. In case you can participate in the public participation on the Finance Bill 2022, please do so, as we expect even tougher taxes ahead. My name is Jesse Rogers. Keep it KTN News.